How's it going, class? It's your professor here. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about understanding core database concepts. So, the objective domain matrix here we're going to talk about understand database concepts, understand relational database, understand DML, which is database data manipulation language, and then DDL, understand data definition language. All right, so a database is an organized collection of data, typically stored in electronic format. It allows you to input data, organize the data, and retrieve the data quickly. Traditional databases are organized by fields, records, and files. So database files. So in Microsoft SQL Server uses three types of files to store the database. Here you have your primary data files with the NBF extension, which contain user-defined objects such as tables and views, as well as system tables. Your secondary data files with the NDF extension on separate physical hard disks to give your database more room. Your transaction log files use the IDF extension and don't contain any objects such as tables or views. So database management system, DBMS. So most users do not access the database directly. Instead, users use a database management system, DBMS, to access the database indirectly. So DBMS is a collection of programs that enables you to enter, organize, and select data in a database. So this is it's typically a software where you go ahead and develop your SQL. So types of database, here you have your flat type database that are considered flat because they are two-dimensional tables consist of rows and columns. Here you have your hierarchical database designed in a similar to a tree structure such as a family tree. Each parent can have multiple children, but each child can have only one parent. So this is a very useful database right here. And then you have your relational database. It's similar to hierarchical database in that data is stored in tables and any new information is automatically added into the table without the need to reorganize the table itself. So hierarchical database is related, kind of, similar to it. So different from hierarchical database, a table in a relational database can have multiple parents. So here you have your database servers. Databases are often found on database servers and they can be accessed by multiple users and to provide a high level of performance. A popular database server is Microsoft SQL Server. This is what we use in class. Constraints are limitations or rules placed on a field or column to ensure that data that is considered invalid or not entered. So here you have your SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS. The central feature of SSMS is the Object Explorer, which allows the users to browse, select, and manage any of the objects with this within the server. Here, this is your software, and from there, this selected here is your tables, and you can see your database and your query window and your column properties. Now we're going to talk about your DML, data manipulation language. It's a language element which allows you to use the core statements. So here, let's go ahead and revisit. Select retrieves rows from the database and enables the selection of one or more rows of columns from one of the many tables in the SQL Server. You have your insert, adds more one of the new rows to a table or view in the SQL Server. Update changes existing data in one of the more columns in the table or view. You have your delete, removes rows from a table or view, and then you have your merge. Performs insert, update, or delete operation on a table, on a target table based on the results of a join where a source table. So here you have your data definition language. Your DDL is a subset of the transact SQL language. It deals with creating database objects like tables, constraints, and store procedures. Some DDL commands include use. So here it changes the database context. You create SQL Server database objects, table, view, or store procedure. You have your alter, changes or existing objects, and you have your drop, removes an object from the database. So here you have your system tables. System views belong to the sys schema. Some of these system tables include you have your tables, columns, database, constraints, views, procedures, indexes, triggers, and objects. And so here, let's go ahead and recap. A database DB is an organized collection of data, typically stored in an electronic format. It allows you to input data, organize the data, and retrieve the data quickly. And here you have your SQL Server uses three types of files to store database: primary Data files with the MDF extension are the first files created in a database. It contains user-defined objects such as tables and views, as well as system tables that SQL Server requires for keeping track of the database. If the database gets too big and you run out of room for your first hard disk, you can create secondary data files with the NDF extension or a separate physical hard disk to give your database more room. So the third type of file is a transaction log file. Transaction log file use the IDF extension and don't contain any objects such as tables or views. So to retrieve data within the database, you will run a database query, which is an inquiry to the database in order to get information back from the database. In other words, a query is used to ask for information from the database and the data is returned. So it's information in, information out. So a database is indexed in a data structure that improves the speed of data retrieval operations on a database table. So most users do not access the database directly. Instead, users use a database management system, DBMS, to access the database indirectly. And then you have your flat type database. It's a very simplistic in design. They're mostly commonly used in a plain text formats as their purpose to hold one record per line, making the access performance and queries very quick. And then you have your tables. Used to store data are two-dimensional objects consisting of rows and columns. So here you have, your IDs and whatever you have uniquely containing to that ID. So here you have your hierarchical. Database design is similar to a tree structure, such as a family tree. Each parent can have multiple children, but each children have only one parent. So here you have your relational database. Is similar to a hierarchical database in that the data is stored in tables and any new information is automatically added into the new table without the need to reorganize the table itself. So different from the hierarchical database, a table is in a relational database can have multiple parents. So databases are often found on a database service so that they can be accessed by multiple users and to provide a high level of performance. A popular database service runs a Microsoft SQL Server. So summary, constraints are limitations or rules placed on a field or column to ensure that data that is considered invalid is not entered. So here you have the SQL Server Management Studio. SSMS is a primary tool to manage the server and its database using a graphical interface. So here you have your DML. It's a language element that allows you to use the core statements, insert, update, delete, and merge to manipulate data in any SQL service table. So you have your DDL, your data definition language, is a subset of the Transact SQL language. It deals with creating database objects like tables, constraints, and stored procedures. And I just want to give a quick conclusion to your first PowerPoint and go ahead and study that and continue on from our database section. Thank you.